be sheriff. How about we start acting like one?
Little Red Riding Hood, you're everything.
Well, we're going to have a howling good time because we're talking movies. We're talking The Wolf of Snow Hollow, starring Jim Cummings, Ricky Landholm, and the late Robert Forster. Written and directed by Jim Cummings. You want people to stop talking shit about police? Do better police work.
But I have to say, I'm just curious if you still have that pepper spray that I got you for communion. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? Tonight, we're going to be talking about The Wolf of Snow Hollow from 2020. And to kick it over to Scott, our resident horror expert. Take it away, Scott.
Okay. You like give me such titles. It makes me feel so important. Eh? Resident horror.
Important or impotent?
What?
Does it make you feel important or impotent?
How would it make me feel impotent?
It's just a play on words, man. Just play on words.
Our expectations of you are very low.
He's got to roll with the punches.
Okay.
It's improv, baby. Yes, and. And moving on.
How many gin and tonics did you have before we started?
All right, Scott. So
Okay.
our resident horror
Yeah.
expert, Scott, is going to take us away.
Yeah, like this film, when it came out last year, was kind of on my radar, but I never actually had a chance to watch it. And if I waited another year to watch it, it wouldn't have been that bad of a deal too. Like, I think it's more interesting because based on what the conversation we had last week with Don't Breathe, and this is way more of an independent feel of like a horror comedy.
100% it is.
I'm way more interested in what your thoughts or your original thoughts are on this on watching it.
So do you mean the fact that, like, yes, Don't Breathe is considered like an independent, but it had what, like a $10 million budget and it looks very high end? By that's what you mean?
Yeah, and this one, like,
This had a $2 million budget, roughly, right?
Yeah, like this to me was a horror comedy movie in the style of like Jared Hess, who
Sure.
by the look on your face, you have no idea who it is, but literally the writer director of Napoleon Dynamite and Nacho Libre. Like, it's like if he was going to make a horror film kind of thing, you have the quirky characters, the quirky dialogue, and kind of like the cut linear scenes kind of thing, the way he does it, where it's all like small town, small sensibilities, and everything just like kind of blows up.
Sure. Or what about Shaun of the Dead? Like kind of in that vein as well. I mean, Shaun of the Dead's a little higher production. Simon Pegg, I mean.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, like, because for me, Shaun of the Dead was more, it's the thing to me that makes a horror comedy good. That's why Shaun of the Dead is amazing. That's why Ghostbusters are amazing, is you have to do the first part right. So you have to do the horror part right.
Got you. Okay.
And then then the comedy just blends into it, right?
So you basically you riff off of the horror. You're making a horror, or you're trying to make a good horror, and then you make it comedic, basically, is what you're saying.
Exactly, right? And I think that's why those two, like in terms of horror comedies, are like 1 and 2, right? Like those are the tops.
Sure. I mean, one could argue, and again, this will actually kind of like lead into my criticism of this film, is both of those films that we just talked about have really good scripts. They start with really good scripts. Like Ghostbusters has a great script. So does Shaun of the Dead. I felt like this to me, and again, I'm going to apply like where I'm currently in my filmmaking, is that you write a draft, you get a first run at that draft, and you keep doing revisions. This feels like the first pass of that draft, and then they went into production. it didn't seem fully developed. It felt very piecemeal. That there was editing choices as well. It tended to like kind of jump around. Like you said, there's some non-linear narrative that's used in some of the kill scenes, which could have been good, but to me it felt a bit disjointed and it was a bit disorganized. So I mean, the reality is do you know much? Did you know about much about Jim Cummings before this?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Like after this film, like the thing that I thought was interesting is like when you go to Rotten Tomatoes about this film, like critics love it. It's like 89% for critics,
100%.
But in terms of an audience score, it's way like it's just past the 50, or it's like 66%, right? From when I looked at it. So yeah, to me, I thought it was weird in terms of the disconnect. But his first film that he wrote and directed, Thunder Road, yeah, it's like 89, like everybody loved it kind of thing. I actually watched it today, and it's literally like, to me, it's the same movie, right? It's definitely the same character. Officer. Yes. Yeah, it's like a police officer who's an alcoholic who, you know, is coming off a loss and trying to deal with that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, it's just like, okay, let's try to do like a Kevin Smith thing in which, you know, Jay and Silent Bob are in every movie, but you're not playing the same player kind of thing.
Yeah, and in Jay and Silent Bob, like they are those characters. They're not those types of characters. They literally play Jay and Silent Bob in each movie. So did you watch the actual feature film Thunder Road? Though it's like 80 minutes, 90 minutes, or did you watch the short?
No, I watched the feature film. It was on Prime here in Canada. Sure. I finished it an hour ago.
Okay, so that's actually on my list to check out because it did really well at both Sundance and South by Southwest film festivals. So one of the things I noticed about this, so first off, in The Wolf of Snow Hollow, he writes, directs, and is the lead actor. And he does the same in Thunder Road, as well as the original. So Thunder Road, the short, is like 9 minutes long or something like that. And it's actually a really cool short. You can find it on YouTube. It's basically, it's essentially him doing a monologue at his mom's funeral. And so it's like a single location. The camera, for the most part, is just static in front of him doing like a slow push in. And it's just him. And it's done in a single shot. And that's actually one of the things that he also used on his short film, The Robbery, which also got nominated for Sundance and South by Southwest. So he seems to like the single shot, like one take kind of filmmaking. And it makes me wonder if that was the problem. And again, I haven't seen Thunder Road, the full feature, but one of the issues I had with The Wolf of Snow Hollow, like I said, is like the editing and the directing, like he didn't seem to be able to execute it properly. And I just wonder if because he's the primary actor, writer, and director, he was too close to the script, so he couldn't separate himself from the work he'd done so that the film could stand on its own. And again, if he's used to working in like single takes, maybe it was just like it was too much, right? Like did you get the budget of what he got to turn Thunder Road into a feature?
No, I didn't, to be honest. Like, I didn't look into Thunder Road that much because we weren't really discussing it today. But like, I'll say in terms of this film, like in terms of Wolf, there are some choices he made as a director that I actually enjoyed a lot and applaud. Like the two cupboard scenes, right? Where it's just like a single pan close up where you see the oven, microwave, and then right above it is the cupboard. It played twice. Like the first day when shit starts going down, you see it at 11 o'clock at night, and it's kind of close up to it. And then the next day when the next murder happens, and then when the third murder happens, and then it like close up and actually goes into it, and that's where he's hidden his alcohol. Each night where he's slowly you know, it's what he was afraid of, right? Because everything was from his point of view. Now, in terms of the writing, this movie does have more plot holes than Swiss cheese, because like, in terms of, if the whole premise was, you know, I like the whole bit where, you know, half the town is like, or half the police department are like, it's a werewolf, and he's like, it's not a fucking werewolf. He's like, it's a man. Right? And he's like, why can't I just be right, kind of thing, right?
Jenna, like I said in that voicemail, there's going to be a lot of late nights and overtime because of the brutal murder that happened in town.
Like, I like that dynamic, but in terms of once you find out who the wolf is, like, how is not given away in the first, like, all your criticisms you had with Don't Breathe and A Blind Man,
Yeah.
If that person lived in the town for all these years and was literally a business that people would go visit, how did no one come across who this guy is if he was a townie?
Yeah, and I mean, even stuff like, realistically, like, you've had these massive murders and you're not calling in like the FBI or like a state police department. But I mean, I think you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say they do address that in the film, because the one cop does want to do that. He's like, let somebody else handle it, and his character's like, when the minute you say somebody else, that means it's never gonna do it. And that's where my quote for the thing came from, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't want people to talk shit, you got to do it.
Yeah, I get that, but the reality is like, you're supposed to be trying to let the audience have a sense of disbelief, but it needs to be suspended, right? And so the idea that you're just having people like ripped apart and no outside agency is coming in, you need to put something in like a blizzard, right? Telephone lines go down, condense the time period, and so they're like, you're on the phone with the FBI, and you're like, hello. Like, so many movies do that, right? You just cut off the communication to the outside world. Now you're like, now we're isolated now. And it also gives a sense of urgency to what you're trying to do. Because now you're not just trying to solve a crime for the sake of solving a crime, is that people are dying fast, and you're on your own. It almost puts you as in survivor mode as the audience. Like, you're starting to like really worry about this. And there seemed to be no intent. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what you're saying. I get it, but that's cliche movie tropes. And if you haven't watched it, I would recommend watching the little hour film on Netflix, which is Attack of the Cliche Movie Tropes, and which nice. they discuss all, like, here's these tropes, like, you know, you're relying on technology, and then technology fails, and now it's just you.
But they're tropes.
Or you're stuck in a blizzard.
And they're cliche for a reason. So I hear what you're saying, and I do actually like the idea of a serial killer being like a monster. Like, that's cool. Like, that's a really cool premise that is outside the box. It's sort of like the blind guy in Don't Breathe. It's a great idea, but if you're gonna get too far outside of the box, you got to make sure everything else is shorn up. So maybe you throw in like that movie trope here in order to, you know, shore up your plot, so that you can go off of it in a different direction, right? This film, like I said, it felt like the first couple drafts of the script, and they didn't work it through. And again, so he's not a super experienced director when it comes to feature films, right? So he basically had a feature that was basically an extension of his short film, which is fine. I mean, the short to the feature premise happens all the time. But it means that you need to make sure you have other people on your crew, or like your script needs to be solid. Like, you don't want to be indie everywhere all the time, because things start to fall apart. So one of my quotes is from Variety to Peter Dubridge. Wolf actually does the thing we all hope second features won't. It reveals that the idiosyncrasies of an unproven director's debut weren't quirks so much as weaknesses. A disappointment for those of us hoping lightning might strike twice for the Thunder Road Helmer. And again, like, maybe he just was outside of his depth on this film, because I'll be honest, it was very difficult for me to get through this film. I think I took it in 4 bites, and it's like 90 minutes long. I think it's less than that. It's 88 minutes long. So it's not even an hour and a half. took me 4 shots at watching it to get through it. It was very sloggy. There's lots of scenes where there's too much time, just kind of stagnant time. It felt very independent, and it didn't need to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. That's what I was saying in terms of my example of like a horror movie in Napoleon Dynamite's world, right? Like where you have these scenes, you have the action, you have the horror, whatever, but then you have these cafe scenes where it's just the characters in like a 10-minute dialogue, just going back and forth, shooting quirks at each other, right?
Yeah. And some of that's fine, right? You cut over, da-da-da-da-da, you cut to something else, moving on, right? I actually, one of my notes was like, it feels like a made-for-TV movie from the time before all movies were made for TV. You know what I mean? Like those Sunday afternoon.
The early 90s, like Stephen King's It. Stephen
Exactly.
King's Wandalaires.
Stephen King, or even a mini series, like a 2-episode mini series or something like that. Like tune in 2 Fridays in a row to see The Wolf of Snow Hollow, yada yada yada. But yeah, so interesting enough, he has some acting credits. None of them are like really important outside of this. He did actually, I think he did well as an actor. There was definitely points that I was like laughing out loud. Like he's got a lot of presence. In some respects, though, he's like overshadowing his other characters, and not because he's the lead, but because like his energy is like sucking up all the oxygen in the scene. So he's not really acting with his fellow actors. He's in a scene and they just happen to be there. And that's not good either, right? Like you want simpatico with your scene partners.
I'll tell you, like, I feel for these actors, right? Because I know what it's like to be in a production with somebody who just sucks up all the oxygen, right? Like, damn! And sometimes it's hard to breathe. I know what it's like. It's like you're drowning.
So how did you pick this movie? Like, how did you come across it in the first place? Because I watched it on Crave.
Yeah, same here. It was literally last year, when we're in COVID and stuff's getting released, VOD and all that stuff. Yeah, and I think it was either Twitter or Facebook or something, like some kind of social. Like this movie was constantly popping up when it got released. So that's what put it on my budget. But I was like, the way I deal with VOD is the same as going to the theaters, right? Like I only go, like before COVID, give or take, I'm only going to the theaters twice, maybe 3 times in a month, right? So if I'm spending $20 or $25 to rent a movie, it's the same thing. It's one that I would go, and I just let this one pass by and until it came on Netflix or Prime or one of the streaming services I have and then watch it through there, right? Watch it through that subscription.
So I've got a note just to our original topic. I got a note from our producer. So Thunder Road was done for like 200,000. So it was basically like a 10-fold increase. He went from 200,000 to a $2 million budget. So I just think it got away from him. You know what I mean? I just don't think he had the experience to.
Well, what was the budget on this one?
$2 million.
And does it say how much it made?
Well, I mean, it's tough, right? Because it did a box office of like, I don't know, 200 grand or something like that. Actually, it did a box office of 92 grand in 112 theaters. But I mean, it came out in September of COVID. Who knows how much money that it made in the rights licensing? Yeah, it's always hard to get those numbers, right? So, but I mean, again, production, he went from $200,000 production budget to $2 million production budget. So again, I think the script got out of his hand. The whole production kind of got away from him, and maybe he needs to like spend some more time or work with a really experienced DOP, because even his DOP, who she did a great job, Natalie Kingston, she actually has a film called Shapeless that's again shot in New Orleans, and it's about like a woman who's dealing with like either anorexia or something like that. And just the trailer, like the cinematics in the trailer, I was like, yeah, I want to fucking watch this. So but she's done mostly like shorts and like indie films, which is fine. Like, I mean, it means that she's got the artistic ability, but I would almost like a film like this. You almost want like a really, like a cinematographer that works with like someone like a Steven Spielberg or Ron Howard or someone who's just like really grounded in like professional filmmaking, not even getting too crazy with the arts, but like just like bang, 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 can kind of keep the direction on track. You know what I mean?
I do, but again, it was a $2 million budget. Some of those people probably would inflate the budget over, right? So you gotta, what, like, again, you're more the production guy since that's what you're doing. But to me, like a 200,000 budgeted film to a $2 million budgeted film, all you're doing is most of the equipment's all the same. You're just paying more people. Right?
Lots more people.
Whether it's you know, whether it's bigger actors like, you know, whatever Robert Forster salary was at the time, because this is his last credited acting role, because he passed right after this.
He died in 2019. He was 78 and died of brain cancer. He was so when I was looking up his filmography, he's got a massive filmography. So I don't know if you ever saw this movie. You're probably a little bit too young. So there's a late 70s Disney film called The Black Hole. And he was like, he played like with the leads in it, like one of the ships.
Yeah, that was when Disney tried to like, you know, before they bought Star Wars, they're like, fuck it, we'll just make our own Star Wars. That completely bombed. Yeah.
But that was like, I remember when I was in like, I was like 5 years old. That was my favorite movie. Like, I played it at my birthday party. Like, I loved it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, man. Like, I was already into the well-produced Disney productions, I guess, you know?
Oh yeah, you were. This piece of knowledge just literally made it 100% better. Now I know why your tastes are so bad. If The Black Hole was your favorite fucking film as a kid, you could have at least gone.
I also like the Blues Brothers.
That's good, but you could at least gone with fucking Flight of the Navigator, right? If you're looking for bad. Oh my god, that's also.
I also liked American Tail. So I mean, we're not. This isn't actually the Kris show, even though I kind of tend to make it my show. But Robert Forster.
For me, Forster for me was actually Jackie Brown.
I was just gonna say Jackie Brown, man. He got because he got his Oscar nod for that.
That's good for him. Did he win?
He did not win. I didn't look up who he lost to. Did you? I'm assuming Jackie Brown is not your favorite Tarantino film, though.
You always have to bring it to Tarantino every episode. Eh?
Jackie Brown is my fucking Quentin Tarantino, and it's based off, what is it, the Rum Diaries or whatever, by the same guy who wrote 410 to Yuma or 310 to Yuma.
Yes, we discussed this last time when we did 310 to Yuma, but no, I did say what my favorite Quentin movie was. So just listen to all the podcasts, and every time just fast forward till you hear Quentin and then stop there and then be like, is this the one he said it? All right, I'm gonna give you some fucking homework now.
Hey man, I'm mostly just doing this so that our audience, who maybe didn't tune into every single one of our episodes yet, although they should, can be like, hey, do I like Scott? I don't know, let's judge him based on his favorite Quentin Tarantino movie.
That's not how anybody judges anybody.
That's how I do.
His favorite Quentin. Yeah, it's more like, what's your favorite Steven Spielberg movie?
E.T. Schindler's List. No, Schindler's List. So did you like this movie? After all of this, what did you think?
Like, I like the effort, and I can see this slowly being I'm not going to put it in the same. Yeah, I'm not putting it in the same kind of genre, like same status, but kind of like in a couple of years from down the road, like a Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of thing, like a movie that completely bombed.
Fucking close.
No, yeah. But that's what I'm saying.
Horrible,
like a movie
horrible
that
analogy.
Completely bombed. No, I'm saying a movie that completely bombed, right? But I can see them doing some, like The Room, right, where once a year this film goes up on the screen and people.
I would say more like right? Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Like, it's because the Room
that's like 100% cult.
Yeah,
right?
but so is The Room and so is Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like those are like fucking literal like examples given for a cult classic film. I don't know if this is going to reach that kind of status, man.
See, I wouldn't say classic though. I wouldn't say cult classic, just a cult film, right? Where
okay,
every once in a while,
sure.
but yeah, that's kind of where I see it. Like again, like some of the choices I did enjoy in terms of what he did, but yeah, like I don't want to spoil like who the werewolf is or the wolf is. But yeah, like offline we can talk about it because that was my biggest fucking like. Once you find out who it is, like
you're like, womp womp.
Like, what? Yeah, I'm like, this is no Sixth Sense.
So I got one more quote from the Hollywood Reporter, and I actually want your kind of feedback on this just because you're into horror and thriller. So I got John DeFore from the Hollywood Reporter. He says, satisfying enough as a horror slasher flick with a black comedy aftertaste. It has some commercial appeal, but doesn't represent a step forward artistically. So I agree with that second component. I think that just going off of the like short films I've seen, this is not better. Like he's not developing as an artist. He may be developing in the sense that he now has a, again, without knowing the numbers, but a very commercially viable horror slasher flick. But yeah, do you think was it satisfying enough as a horror slasher flick?
Like it was okay. Like to be honest, like I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. Like this is middle of the road for me. And I think as well as I know you're putting him down, I would say a lot in terms of it, but there could be one
that's
component.
Literally like our job on this podcast is to do that. So.
It's not though. You don't have to be the asshole.
Fuck you, asshole.
Oh, fuck you.
What? Yeah. Dumbass? Keep walking.
Yeah, all right, tough guy.
You want to go?
Yeah. Oh, like you're always great.
John.
All right.
All right, like but there literally is one component that we're probably not thinking. Like Thunder Road was 2019. This film was 2020, right? So you have a year turnaround, or let's say 2-year turnaround from when he actually did Thunder Road. And it probably was, you know, like most musicians and everything, you have that sophomore slump.
Sure, maybe.
Right? Like for me, you know,
unless you're Quentin Tarantino, because there was no sophomore slump there. So,
well, what wouldn't you consider? Well, I guess how.
Yeah, go ahead. I can see the wheels in your fucking.
No,
head
yeah, because I forgot about that. Reservoir Dogs is his first, right? And then you go Pulp Fiction, but technically Jackie Brown was a flop compared to his other films.
But it's not a bad movie.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but in terms of that, it was. But if you went for just from Pulp to Jackie, like and I think a lot of people in our generation probably did that because he hit hard with Pulp.
Fucking right, he did.
And then Jackie came out, and a lot of people were disappointed. And then that's when, you know, the blockbuster guys like, well, you should see his first movie, right? Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
Like I know that's how I went with Quentin was Pulp, Jackie, then it went to Reservoir Dogs, not realizing Reservoir Dogs was actually the first film he released, right? But what was I saying, like in terms of the sophomore slump, like, and I think adding the budget and probably a quick fucking turnaround that the production company and the studio wanted is probably why, you know.
Hey, it's possible, man.
It is what it is.
Or maybe he just is already at his peak as a director. So I guess we'll find out. He's got some other stuff coming out. He interesting, just a little tidbit. I think that so he's actually going to be. They didn't even have what character he's playing, but he has a role in Halloween Kills. So I mean, what's that out? October 15th.
Yeah, that's this year. Yeah. Like 2 weeks or.
Yeah. Today's
next
the 1st.
week. Yeah. Well, technically, when this gets released, it'll be the 7th. So yeah, I think it's next week.
Nice.
Go on. Timey-wimey, man. Timey-wimey.
Anyway, I mean, if someone asked me if they should watch this, I would say the poster art's really nice. So, yeah, that's kind of.
You know what? Like where people are in terms of films too.
This would have made a this would have made a good 60-minute like long short basically, or like a short feature. Anyway, keep going.
The perfect 90-minute Netflix and chill movie.
Because you don't want to watch it?
Well, because that's the thing. Like technically in reality, you can watch the beginning part.
Yep.
Right? Where you see the first fuck. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, there you go.
Bam.
All right.
The best Netflix
You're like
perfect Netflix and chill film. That's all for me. And unless Scott's got anything else, we will see you guys next week.
And that is our rant for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're looking to get a hold of us, please go to our website at howdylikethatmovie.com. All our social media links are there, and you can email us as well. Yeah, and then I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, it looks funny, right? But then, yeah, like once I saw it, I'm like, wow. I'm like, all the best bits are literally in the trailer.
Yeah, I love that, man. When you could just, you're like, oh, I could have just watched a fucking 15-second trailer. Save myself a whole 65 minutes or whatever, right?
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.